OCO, hello everyone. I'm Jen Deerenwater. I'm the founding executive director of Crushing Colonialism. I'm a citizen of the Cherokee Nation of Oklahoma, and I was raised between my nation's reservation in rural Oklahoma and in Abilene, Texas. So I'm now based on occupied Piscataway land known as Washington, D.C. I am a light-complected native Two-Spirit woman. I have shoulder-length brown hair that I'm wearing down, and it's a little curly. I have on black glasses, a black blouse that has a sort of lattice print design down the sleeves, and I'm wearing dangly earrings in purple lipstick, dark purple lipstick. And I'm sitting in front of a white wall. Crushing Colonialism's mission is to uplift and tell the stories of Indigenous people through multimedia work while supporting those doing the work. Our organization is founded and operated by Indigenous people working in a variety of media fields across the world. We work to increase the pay and employment of Indigenous media makers while also promoting their work and increasing access to professional representation, and hopefully one day also providing funding for media projects. In doing this, we control our narratives in order to crush colonialism. I'm especially delighted to bring the 3 R's, realize, recognize, and reconciliation to the world. This 5-day virtual event series covers reproductive justice issues that Indigenous people across the so-called Americas are facing. Every day covers a related topic with diverse Indigenous people speaking their truths. The 3 R's has been a labor of love organized in partnership with Joy Braun, Lorraine Clements, and Valerie Proctor. We've had to change this event over time, though, due to the COVID-19 pandemic and a lack of resources. Unfortunately, along the way, we lost a Métis elder, Velma Orvis, who was originally scheduled as a speaker. In many ways, the struggles we've encountered organizing this event are tied to the genocide Indigenous people are still suffering. We're focusing on reproductive justice issues as these are directly tied to this genocide. The organization Sister Song defines reproductive justice as the human right to maintain personal bodily autonomy, have children, not have children, and parent the children we have in safe and sustainable communities. The 3 R's is generously sponsored by the LGBTQ Task Force, Planned Parenthood Federation of America, Autistic Women and Non-Binary Network, DC Diverse City Fund, the Campaign for Southern Equality, the Washington Office on Latin America, the Civil Liberties and Public Policy Conference and Program at Amherst College, and the North American Indian Center of Boston. Today, I'm excited to moderate a conversation between Albanese Ferreira TK and Jean-Luc Pirit on environmental justice and colonization. Unfortunately, Joy Braun is not able to be with us today, but we will still have an amazing conversation. So Albanese is an Indigenous member of the Pihau people. Her mother and father are Pihaus. As one of her many stories, she is involuntarily displaced from her territory, which means that over time she has sought to return to her roots, that is, to her identity. For more than 30 years, she has lived diverse experiences, some of them strengthening her and others giving her strength and adversity to continue her journey back to her roots. Albanese had the opportunity to attain primary and secondary education and studied at the National School of Dramatic Arts. Years later, she came to the realization that in order to access true knowledge in its entirety, she had to decolonize her education and her being. Along the way, she has met other beautiful Indigenous women and men, Black women and men, and individuals from different social spaces. Understanding their experiences helped her find common ground in safeguarding their physical and geographical territories using Indigenous thought. This has been vital in her existence and is the strength she has to continue her work. the strength that gives her life. Together with ethnic communities, she seeks to embrace diversity to safeguard life in its different manifestations for humanity, future generations, and the Renacientes. Now, Jean-Luc Perrette is originally from New Orleans, Louisiana. Jean-Luc now resides in Jamaica Plain, Boston. Prior to his election as president of the board of directors for the North American Indian Center of Boston, Jean-Luc was also elected to the community linguist seat of the advisory circle for the Kolang for the period of 2016 to 20. The Institute on Collaborative Language Research, or COLANG, as it's called, is designed to provide an opportunity for community language activists and linguists to receive training in community-based language documentation and revitalization. Currently, Jean-Luc volunteers with his tribe's Language and Cultural Revitalization Program, which is a collaboration with Tulane University in New Orleans. This program is based on a tradition passed from Jean-Luc's great-grandfather, Joseph Alcide Perrette Sr., who was the last traditional chief and medicine man of the Tunica Biloxi. The tribe is an amalgamation of members from the central Louisiana communities of Tunica, Biloxi, Choctaw, Ofo, and Aval. Jean-Luc has a BA in Humanities with a co-major in Mass Communications and Japanese from Dillard University in New Orleans. He also earned an AS in Video Game Design from Full Sail University in Orlando, Florida. Jean-Luc previously is the International Procurement and Logistics Manager for the FAB Foundation. The FAB Foundation was formed in 2009 to facilitate and support the growth of excuse me, to facilitate and support the growth of the International Fab Lab Network, as well as the development of regional capacity building organizations. The Fab Foundation is a US nonprofit organization that emerged from MIT's Center for Bits and Atoms Fab Lab program. So welcome, Jean-Luc and Albanese. Would you each describe yourself and your surroundings? And please remember to say your names when you speak and to speak slowly for our interpreters and captioners. Jean-Luc, would you like to start first?
I'll start. As is our practice at the North American Indian Center of Boston, we wish to acknowledge the land that we are on, the land that sustains us, as the traditional indigenous territory of the Massachusetts Nation, who continue to this day in part through their lineal descendants, the Massachusetts tribe at Ponkapog. Tonight, so I am male presenting person with some facial hair. I have mustache and some as much of a beard as a native person can probably grow. Also, I have some wavy hair, and I have a lighter complexion. I have a blue button-down collar shirt that I'm wearing under a navy blue cardigan, and I have a red beaded necklace that was gifted to me by a grandmother that is associated with a moon dance that I serve for. I have a Zoom background tonight. On the left side of the screen, there is the logo of the North American Indian Center of Boston. There is a native person inside of a circle, and at the left-hand corner of the logo, there is a pipe crossed with a spear. So that's the logo of the North American Indian Center of Boston. And also behind me, there is a wide shot of Plymouth, Massachusetts, where we hold the National Day of Mourning. which is organized by the United American Indians in New England, um, and is observed on what is commonly known in the United States as Thanksgiving Day.
Albanese, would you please describe yourself and your surroundings?
Bueno, muy buen atardecer desde
Good afternoon from Colombia.
pues ya conocen mi nombre.
You already know my name.
Vengo hoy a compartir
I come here to share.
lo que algunos llaman la parte
Some of you
ambiental.
call so-called environment.
Pues, para nosotros,
For us,
desde nuestros mayores,
as
tenemos que
elders,
hablar del origen.
we need to talk about the
En el
origin,
caso de
the
103
103 or more nations that exist in Colombia. We originated in the air, the soil, and the water. Before the invaders came, there were life dynamics that weren't perfect, because whether we're indigenous, Black, or any other color, we are humans. But there were dynamics of relationships that had a certain level of equilibrium. People basically had equilibrium with nature. They saw it as a living being. It wasn't this idea of like subjugating the earth. It was you were part of the earth. Once the invaders came, everything changed. First of all, they brought ways of life and thinking that are very strong, and there were peoples that were nomadic, that had a different dynamic of homes, fishery, and they used to do in a harmonic way. But when these invaders came, they imposed the idea of cities on us, and they discovered that for our brothers and sisters, having what they call precious metals like gold, we didn't think of it that way. That it has a price or it's something you can use, but that's how they saw it. So they came and they broke and imposed upon us when they played a big role, the Jesuits. So Christianism and religion, because we have until today our own spirituality. We have those three dimensions, the air, the soil, and the water, that have for millennia been what has fed us. So this completely was ruptured, so that today, what is happening with these large-scale economic projects, it's like a plague that's invading us and all of our nature. For the Uwa peoples, which is one of the many peoples in Colombia, oil is basically the blood of the land. And we believe for real that it's our blood. Our relationship with earth is with our mother. Nobody wants to take your mother out of the earth. But there's this complete model of economic development. We didn't even have the word development. Different economies. We started having governments that basically imposed a bunch of laws that support this idea. We also see that we also have our own ways, like the origin and our laws of origin, our natural order, our right, and our duty. And we've been trying to position those at a legal level in that system so that it has the same level, even though for 528 years we've been completely devastated by that system. But we found allies. And with allies, we are able to try to stem the environmental disasters, such as the right to be free, informed consent. And that is so important to us. And it goes after our principles. It basically follows the concept of the right of the natural law. And so the previous consultation supports this, but the Colombian government spends many years figuring out how to reform that. It's like a little rat that's going after, cheese, because everything has to do with the previous consultation from the ILO Convention 169 has been so important for us. But it also had a lot of issues and it wasn't completely clear. So the government has had that appetite for figuring out how to undermine it. At this time, it's asking for them to be a virtual reform of the previous consultation process. And they're doing that on purpose because we don't have the infrastructure in our nations so that people can participate in consultation. So it is a form. Basically, it's a way of like trying to, take something from you from under the table. So we're calling the international community to support us against this. But at this time, we have so many large-scale economic projects that are so scary. For example, so in our sacred lands, there are 280 plus projects in just the province of Cundinamarca. There's another area in Boyacá. We have had to do everything to stop the government from expanding these projects there. We've had to take over basically streets so that they don't attempt against the areas where everything's produced naturally. But the majority of peoples, we have this culture of the key. We think you just open the key and water keeps coming everywhere magically. But that's not the way it is. Water has its own sacred space. And in that area, there are waterfalls where the water has to go through. And basically, the government wants to take advantage of that. We have another one that is across 4 different provinces. Tolima, Huila are 2 of them, and it has to do with to unite and to do a big highway so that they can get and extract all these hydrocarbons to the sea without problems. And they call that development. So there's a problem. What is the model of development that today, for 528 years, has imposed upon us? When for us, life is more important. But it's not just life, it's for everybody. It's not, and also the idea of capturing oxygen. This is generating internal terrible problems in our environment because the government, on the one hand, talks to a couple of our brothers and sisters who don't really have a clear conscience of things, and they use that against us. However, we believe we were going to continue fighting, and we keep fighting for life. It's not a problem. What is called an environmental for us is called a life problem. And it's not just our lives as indigenous and Black people, but for humanity as a whole. For us, it's clear that the Amazon, the tremendous amount of wood that's being taken out of there and all of the roads that they've constructed to take out that wood, some of the most beautiful places you've seen in the world. But each time there's one large scale economic project, as soon as they're there, you have both the legal and the illegal actors operating, and they start generating all sorts of problems in the social construct. They start violating women. Women end up having children that they hadn't planned. They start stigmatizing us. They bring alcohol. They end up displacing us. So with the oil palm plant, it generated so many problems, so much displacement that obviously our government does not recognize. It's not going to recognize it, but our people who live in those areas see it every day. They know it's because of that. And everything's got intensified because several of us and our organizations, we were able to work jointly and do a historical alliance, which was the confirmation of the Ethnic Commission for Peace and for the Defense of the Rights. So the defense of our territory is not just water and wood, it's also the thinking of indigenous people. And that thinking and our way of thinking is so important in the whole world. I'm something during the day, I'm something during the night. I live in the city. So, the dress that I have to wear on Saturday, Sunday, or for the party, for us, we are integrated. We don't have those notions. So we decided to work together and historically have Indigenous and Black people come together. So today, WOLA and other organizations helped us do, and we were able to do what we have now, which is this ethnic commission. And we were fought to have the ethnic chapter basically integrated into the peace accord. That wasn't a gift of the government. That was a big struggle. And there, we have been working now to implement it. But each day we have this harsh reality of what's after the post so-called conflict. We've seen deaths going up, we've seen new displacement, and sometimes you feel so much distrust about this virus. I mean, yes, it exists. COVID exists, and it's taken a lot of our people because we don't have the infrastructure to be able to take people and get them treated. And our problem, when an elder dies or a child dies, it's a huge loss. Many of our elders have been taken by this virus. So now we're dealing with these hard realities. Our people are dealing with the virus. Then on the other side, we have the selective assassinations against us, against women and men, kids. Now they're also killing our kids. And it's the actors, the illegal armed groups that take away our youth. I can't remember the technical name, but basically so that they make part of their ranks and their armed groups. And then the implementation is not happening. There is no implementation. So we're so worried when the government gives these reports with statistics that we think, where did they get these? Where are all these women that we supposedly got land? Where are all these women that supposedly participated in the peace accords territorial economic development projects. So we women have decided to join forces. We're Black and Indigenous women together. And we ask of these people, where does this comes from? And they have no idea what you're talking about because we don't get invited. They don't go to where people live, where reality is. Also with men, our men are part of us as well. We respect them profoundly, and they profound feminist women, but we're integrated. We don't do a separate group for women.
Es violaciones físicas.
Physical violations have happened to us. It's very painful. So we need spaces that are specific as women. But you also have to understand that the peace accord has safeguards that are substantial and so important. One of them is the previous consultation process, the cultural objection, the gender focus, and the non-repetition and non-rollbacks of the rights that we've been able to get up until this point. And what has been the response of the government? The response of the government is basically, it says it has different offices. They say what they did 3 years ago and they show it as if they did it today. But in reality, there is no budget or any specified budget for anything having to do with the ethnic chapter. So there's a lot of problems with the gender, family focus of the accord. And we,
En Cuba, el
and
momento
those of us who went to Cuba where the peace table was formed, we were able to allow 4 safeguards. But we see we're so anxious that the implementation is not following any sort of cultural sensitivity or pertinence. There's no dialogue. We have a government that's behind to see how it can intervene a little bit. And it's trying to destroy the previous consultation process. So that's why today we really want to ask in a respectful way, but in an urgent way, but make recommendations in the name of the Ethnic Commission, WOLA, and all of you. We ask, we need the implementation in a pertinent and cultural way of the peace accords. We need a budget that's specific. And they need to take into account all of these safeguards that are in the ethnic chapter. At the same time, given that the internal armed conflict continues to advance and affects our men and women, both indigenous, Blacks, and rural farmers, we need, how do we get this humanitarian accord with the other groups that we've been pushing for as an ethnic commission, at which the government completely ignores? We need that support so that the gender focus and family focus that's also transversal is taken into account, because talking about family, that's not just some postal card. I have to recognize I've made lots of mistakes with the Black people, but it's really the Black nations because they are very diversity and they have different families and they have their own way of thinking. It's not the same. One family from the San Andres Island in the north, or a family who's Black from the Choco Pacific region. And it's cultural. Imagine the diversity of families in the indigenous peoples. The implementation needs to be in accordance with that diversity and those different families, because it can't be in any other way. That's why it's so important for us, these spaces. And at the same time, I just want to tell you, the Ethnic Commission continues to work. We have many different processes, the indigenous and Black organizations, and we work a lot so that we can go to our territories, because it's in our territories where we give nutrition to our reality. Right now I'm in the city, I'm in this quarantine, I go outside and I get a bus. But when you're in the territory, your reality is not that. It's completely different. And here in Colombia, in the middle of so many things that are painful, we are happy and we have joy that many of us are still alive in our and living in our territories. But those are the ones that these large scale economic projects want to go into. So to talk about the environment, I understand what the so-called environment is, but it's not our concept, because the indigenous nations and the Black nations territory is absolutely everything. It's where you are brought up, is where you have all of their reasons for being. An indigenous and a Black person without a territory is the worst, most disastrous thing. I have my own territory, but I'm here. I'm in Nagdagaima. That's where my reserve is. It's called Palma Alta. And symbolically is my umbilical cord and my placenta. Our placentas or umbilical cords are basically placed where we are born. It connects us to our territories. And our elders who are there were basically grown and sown there. That's why we call ourselves the defense of the territorial lands. So we think defending of the rights of Mother Earth, we have to continue to get more people to support us. Doesn't matter what race you are. That's how our elders thought about it. Just at that time, they didn't have so many of these other people around. But all of us need this Mother Earth. We all need to be very connected and working on this, especially at this very complex time where the greed has gotten rid of natural resources in entire countries that are going to other countries because they need that. So they can get those resources that they completely used in theirs. So it's that lack of equilibrium. And that's what leads in this planet and in our Mother Earth. That's why we, as the women, keep saying it's necessary to have healing and to heal our earth. And the first territory is not just for men, it's for women too. We need to do an internal healing without healing, while healing Mother Earth at the same time. And this is why having these exchanges, having these alliances allows us to unify, to say first life, or the natural resources that give some profit to the government. It's very hard. But if we work in the same path, you and us, we can do it. So then we won't talk about the environment because we're part of that environment. And so what happens to Mother Earth happens to us. We, in our spaces, have a commission that talks about the so-called environmental issue, and it's important to talk about that. Read those legal fights, but there's a superior fight. The first guardians of Mother Earth were our ancestors and their spirituality because of their strong connection to the river, to the mountain. Now, us, it takes us a bit more because we have to retake that relationship. And that's why we have to have dialogue. What are those tools that allow us to defend life in all of its senses, in all of its dimensions? Because what is good for the indigenous and Black people is good for humanity. Thank you. I know I tend to speak a lot. And I know there are other people. I want to thank you so much and tell you to please listen to our recommendations. We need your solidarity with this implementation. And it has to follow our culture. It has to have funding. We need that humanitarian accord because every day they're assassinating our sisters and brothers. And we need that reality for us as women. Thank you so much. Thank you to everybody who's here and speaking to us through the spirit world. Thank you.
This is Jen speaking. So Wado, thank you, Albanese, for sharing all of that information and that wisdom with us. You know, regardless of how far apart we may be, there is a lot of similarities amongst Indigenous people and a lot of commonalities in the way colonialism has impacted us. Jean-Luc, so I know that you're based in Boston now, but your tribal nation is from Louisiana. And, you know, I've spent some time down there and seen what the environmental destruction has been like. And it is probably some of the worst, worst situation I've seen within the so-called US. So would you talk to us a bit about what's happening in Louisiana, you know, about Cancer Alley and the Ile de Jean Charles as climate refugees, and just tell us like how it's impacting Indigenous tribes there and how you all are responding to it.
Thank you, and I hope that I can add just a fraction of the wisdom that Albanese has contributed to this conversation so far. Yeah, I want to first start off by saying that, you know, my journey in this work of environmental justice started when my family lost our home in Hurricane Katrina 15 years ago this year. That we, you know, I was born and raised in New Orleans. I'm very much, you know, of that culture. And so when I hear Albanese talk about solidarity between the Black community and Indigenous nations, that's something that was very much a part of my upbringing, and especially like my own family is mixed, so it's very you know, I resonated a lot with what Albanese was saying. You know, I think that, you know, just to kind of just frame the geography, you know, we have all of these superstorms coming from West Africa going into the Gulf of Mexico, and you see them pass past Cuba, past Puerto Rico, past the Dominican Republic, past Florida and the Yucatan, and then go up into the Gulf of Mexico. And we've had storms. I think there was a Category 5 that passed through the Yucatan just within the last couple of weeks. So the, for myself, for my family, to lose our home in Hurricane Katrina was traumatic enough. But that was only the beginning of a very rapid change in the environment. And yet, in Louisiana, we have tribal communities, like you said, the Ile de Jean Charles Band of Biloxi, Chitimacha, Choctaw, our cousins in the southeast region of Louisiana. They lost 95% of their land since 1955. So we're not just talking about something that has happened since 2005. It's not something that has happened since 15 years ago, or even thinking about it, in the context of 50 years ago or so. This is something that is systemic. This is something that, when we're hearing a lot of the wisdom coming out of Colombia on these matters, we can point to 1492 and what happened with the Taino and the Arawak. It wasn't just the genocide. Columbus didn't just go to those islands with a mission just to kill people, but it was to enslave, it was to extract, it was to do harm, and yes, it was to claim land. But this is something that we have seen, that not only the murders and the violence that have happened on our bodies, but the theft from our land and our natural resources. And so this has happened in 1492. This has happened 400 years ago here in Massachusetts, when we're talking about the landing of the Mayflower, and we're talking about wars that happened here in Massachusetts in 345 years ago, that still have intergenerational traumas that happen to this day. Um, you know, it's definitely a lot. But what is, I say all of that because what happened in New Orleans, it's very much interconnected to what's happening in other parts of the world. And we can point to what the Catholic Church has done in not rescinding the doctrine of discovery, which has justified the exploitation of our peoples and the theft from our peoples. We can talk about even just the political designation of being indigenous peoples. Why is it that indigenous nations do not have the same rights as nation states? Why is it that when we make agreements with nation states, it can be litigated within their courts, and our rights can be diminished? And we can look at the past 500 years, and we can look at this long road to actually having equal rights, not just for indigenous peoples and for nation states, but for men and for women, for indigenous peoples, for Black peoples. But even now we're talking about the rights of nature to exist. We're talking about rights of animals. And so when we're starting to have this evolution where the consciousness is elevating to the point to where everything has a right, then we start to turn back some of this damage. But for a lot of our communities, the damage is already done. It's already too late. Again, 95% of the land since 1955, leading to the world's first climate change refugee community. You ask about Cancer Alley, just outside of New Orleans. Last year, I participated in the Dred Scott reenactment of the 1811 German Coast Uprising, which was the largest slave rebellion in the mainland of the United States, which was inspired by the Haitian Revolution. And while we were doing this reenactment, walking along the levees outside New Orleans in a town called Norco, which is actually an acronym, which kind of stands for the New Orleans Refining Company, where my aunt and my uncle still live, and my cousin still lives with his children. We were walking along the levees, and we were chanting as our ancestors, as the enslaved Black and Indigenous peoples were doing at that time in 1811. But we were doing so in the context of, not only do we have the plantations in the landscape, but now we have the oil refining companies, and the water that was dripping on our faces as we were marching was not just rain, but it was residue coming from these refineries. So, you know, it's very much, you know, the realities that we face, you know, where we're talking about things that happened 500 years ago, 345 years ago, 200 years ago, and yet it has not changed for us. Earlier today, I took part in a press conference called Justice Can't Wait. And, you know, I can say that, you know, for our peoples, it's been, you know, 400 years, and we're still waiting for justice. We're still waiting for things to return to normal, even within this pandemic. So yeah, so that's part of that's part of it, but absolutely, you know, it's we are facing a reality where the state of Louisiana might sink into the waters. You know, you look at the actual maps of where land is, where people can habitate, and where the waters have taken back the land, and Louisiana is, you know, slowly the waters are coming in, and the land is being eaten up. And all, you know, while, you know, it's sad for the communities that are there, we're talking about indigenous nations that aren't even recognized by the federal government, who don't even have the same rights as federally recognized tribes, that are along the coast and having their communities and their livelihoods impacted. So yeah, it's absolutely complex, and there's a lot of damage that was done over the centuries that we have to do the work to undo.
This is Jen speaking again. Wado, thank you, Jean-Luc. You know, I always considered myself an environmentalist, but I've always felt kind of odd in saying that as an Indigenous person, because kind of like speaking to what both of you have said, you know, you can't really separate us from the earth. You know, we're all connected. But, you know, it wasn't until I spent a summer living in Alaska that I really started to understand the impacts of global climate chaos. And I remember I was on this little tour of some glaciers, and the person leading the tour kept saying that, oh, you know, we've lost some glaciers to, quote, melting. And I went up and asked him later, like, you know, it's global warming. Why won't you say it? And he's like, well, it's too political and we don't want to make people angry. I think that was the moment when I was like, wow, I have to step up and start doing more in this, because this is not a problem, you know, 200 years from now. Like, this is happening now. And the US is responsible for the bulk of the world's carbon emissions. You know, we make a good majority of the trash for the world, and we're still doing awful things like fracking so that wealthy people can get wealthier, and we pollute the world with plastic. You know, and you know, who suffers along the way? It's Indigenous people, it's Black and brown people, you know, it's women who suffer the violence from being in those communities. And it's not just the pipelines or the mines either. in my reservation, we have a problem with large scale chicken farms. That is polluting our waters, so big agriculture also plays a role in this. And I think about how it's just also connected, like the disregard and the disdain for indigenous lives and for Black and brown lives. It's all connected to capitalism, and it's this weird sort of circle of, you have Nestle coming in and basically taking water from Lake Michigan and from in Canada basically for free, so that they can then bottle it in plastic that harms the water to get the gas fracked to make the plastic, and then we can't cook, or we can't grow or gather or hunt or fish off the land because the land and the water are polluted. So then what do we have to do? We have to rely on big agriculture for food. It feels like this isn't just one issue, one pipeline, one mine. It's something much larger. Albanese, we have a little bit of time left before we start our questions and answers, but would you just tell us, briefly what the situation is like in Colombia in terms of, the corporations, the World Bank, the United States, and the imperialism, like we're coming into, these entities are coming into your territories and doing some pretty horrible things. Like, um, how is that playing out for you all exactly? I hope my question is making sense.
Sí, sí, señora.
Yes, I understand. I'm going to share with you something. Here, the multinationals come from multiple countries. Something that affected us, that was basically presented as Plan Colombia from the United States, had a huge impact on us. But everything comes together. In Tolima, there's a town called Stones. Stones is very distant, very small, maybe has 3,000 people living there. But there they discovered a metal. And so I think they were Canadians. It starts with an A, I forget the name. Started going there, and people started to follow them. There were 7 or 8 different indigenous groups, but they were very joined together, those indigenous, and people started organizing themselves. From the kids to the oldest people got together. They unified the students from the University of Tolima, and they started facilitated to the indigenous things, and they managed to stop this. There's the case of the Chocó department, where you see the intervention of wood. I spent a bit of time going to the Chocó area. Chocó, for me, if I was an indigenous, if I hadn't gone to Chocó, I wouldn't understand the conflict in the way. I'm not a wise person on conflicts or anything. I'm just an older lady who's trying to learn things. There, I could see what would happen when the plane would go around Chocó. Due to the geography there and the way that it's set up, everything becomes very complex. Why? There are areas that to get there, it's 5 days in a river, and not whatever river and not whatever time. You go on the panga. Panga is the name of the canoes used by Black people, and you start from 5 a.m. to 7 p.m. because there is another Colombia, and that other Colombia is demarcated by its own rules. And there you see, And personally, I think that our brothers that work in Choco for the defense of their rights are really brave. Everything's dense. Everything's like the climate. You just bathe and in 5 seconds you're completely covered in sweat. There are multinationals there. How did they stop oil extraction in Suba? They managed to stop it in Suba, but they ended up keep trying to see how they can do it. A big part of Colombia has under different concessions that have been granted to multinationals. We've done marches and alliance with students, with indigenous Black people in Tolima. We've tried to defend Cajamarca. Cajamarca, Tolima is seen as a natural dispensary because it's a very productive area. They wanted to do a mine and they wanted to do open pit mining. But we moved a lot of people. There's something so beautiful that in defense of the life, it's not just the indigenous that fight. There's, like many people said, like Jen just said, there's work of opening consciousness. I didn't know that Jen was indigenous, but I went at one point to the Organization of American States and I saw some indigenous with blue eyes and I was shocked because I'm used to indigenous looking more like me. So when you see other indigenous, you're like, wow, there are different types of indigenous people. There are whiter indigenous people, and it has to do with life. What is good for us is good for life. We have to have a network to defend our lives. That's why we are thankful for these spaces. I know that WOLA and many others help us to try to bring us together, but we need to continue to do these. So in Cajamarca, there was a lot of blood killed here, a blood spilled here. A lot of youth were killed because they did campaigns to try to raise consciousness. They moved a lot of people. They're 15 years old, 20 years old, and they killed them like with no problem. They just killed them all. Was it the multinational? I don't know. I wouldn't doubt it would be, but I don't have the evidence because they're like a cat, you know? It says Colombia has concessions in most of the territory. And there's a problem with the previous consultation process. Addition to the fact that the government is behind reforming it, not in our favor, they have a model. They go and they get a bunch of signatures for a bunch of people who are indigenous, that are just random indigenous people. And they come and show it saying, hey, we consulted with indigenous people. We assume that happens too in the United States. And when it says to them, they deny it. The people who signed, they'll deny it. So the day that they prevented a report of the implementation of the ethnic chapter, there was a woman from the government of a very high level who said the indigenous people are so important. We have to protect them. They're so important for the government. They're a reason for the government being. But why? Why is she saying this? Because there's a whole team of ours that's been bugging them. So the multinationals are in bed with the government because the government decides to do whatever it wants with these companies on top of us. It doesn't care what we say. Money is the priority for them. The big business is what they care about. The government cares more about big business than the lives of people. They don't care about the urban people or rural people. the amount of children who've been killed here in Bogota and other cities,
uno realmente
one really feels like
yo creo que no solamente yo, las mujeres y hombres de mi edad no vamos a
women of my
parar,
age are not going to stop struggling,
seremos un
but
mínimo de un grano de arena que
but we
hemos
might be a minimum of a grain of salt that helped,
esa cosa tan densa que se llama
because it's that
gobierno
big thing that's called government doesn't allow us to really
cambio de fondo
generate
o nosotros
fundamental changes that we need. But as indigenous people, but Afros and indigenous
alianza
need to have the spiritual alliance
nuestras deidades son verdad.
because our deities are real.
Trajeron una religiosidad
Here they
mentirosa.
brought us this, lying religion.
Movían, corrían las
But our
nubes.
elders used to move clouds. We need to have that alliance.
Juntarnos más allá de los horarios y que nuestros
We need our authorities,
tehualas, nuestros médicos
our
tradicionales, o como se
traditional
llamen en los diferentes
doctors that we call tehualas,
los sabedores del pueblo
or others say wise people in our communities, are asking to be able to equilibrate and harmonize things a bit more. So I hear all of you. I'm like, it's difficult there too, but here it's bad also. So we need to, thank you, unify.
This is Jen speaking.
Esta es
Okay, so this is Jen speaking. So I just want to tell our audience members we're going to do a question and answer portion in a minute. So if you have questions for Jean-Luc or Albanese or for me, you can put them in the chat, or you can click the raise your hand and someone will get to you to go over that. So Jean-Luc, we've touched a bit on, the different ways that colonization is impacting the environment and impacting our lives. Could you talk to us a bit about its impact on the health of Indigenous peoples in your areas?
Yeah, and gratitude again to this is Jean-Luc speaking again, and gratitude to Albanese for all that she's sharing tonight. I just wanted to build off of some of the ideas because a lot of what Albanese is experiencing in a lot of her similar frustrations that she's experiencing in Colombia, like we're experiencing that here in Boston and Massachusetts. I just, North American Indian Center of Boston is a 50-year-old organization. We marked our anniversary on October 20th of this year. And in 1976, the state of Massachusetts designated us as a liaison between the residents who are members of tribes who have government-to-government relationships with the Commonwealth of Massachusetts, but are outside of the current borders. So for people that aren't familiar with the Northeast region, Massachusetts used to be a bay colony, which extended up into what we now know as Maine. So that includes government-to-government relationships with the Penobscot, the Passamaquoddy, the Maliseet, the Mi'kmaq. But when we go back to the war that happened here 345 years ago, that actually expands the numbers of peoples that have ancestral and cultural ties to this area. We're talking about the Abenaki in Quebec. We're talking about Delaware Nation in Oklahoma. So we have national and international ties with tribes, all over the place, and how this actually impacts the health of the peoples that are here. First and foremost, Massachusetts does not report data on American Indians and Alaska Natives who are impacted by COVID-19 here within the state. When it comes to reporting on our women who are affected by domestic violence and sexual assault, when there is an intake process for them to have their cases reported, and they're not asked to identify as American Indian or Alaska Native. So we're seeing a data equity issue when it comes to our community. But this is all tied back to problems that have persisted since that war 345 years ago. It was only until 2005 that the law, the Boston Indian Imprisonment Act, a stop and frisk type program that happened here in the city of Boston was finally repealed from that war 345 years. So 300, almost over 340, over 300 years, American Indians walking the streets of Boston were illegal, and it was punishable by imprisonment. And even today, when we're talking about the environmental justice work that North American Indian Center of Boston is involved with, there were concentration camps out on the Boston Harbor Islands, which resulted in thousands of graves that are out there on those islands. And when we go to the city governments, when we go to the state governments and say that those graves need to be protected, and we bring in letters from Quebec, from Oklahoma, from all over the state tribes that have had those relationships with the governments here. They get disregarded because the city doesn't know what it means to have government to government relationships. The state barely even knows what it means to have government to government relationships with the indigenous nations here within the United States, especially those that have ancestral and cultural ties to this area. And so because of that lack of, because of that ignorance of how to actually function and how to actually respect the relationships between the governments, that actually adversely impacts the public health of our community members. So yeah, it's a very, very complex problem and tied to a lot of history.
You can do it now.
Thank you, Jean-Luc. This is Jen speaking again. I apologize. I got lost in our conversation and realized we didn't take our 1-minute breaks. So I know we're towards the end, but let's take a 1-minute. We're going to take a 1-minute break right now, and that'll give all the audience members a chance to give us their questions for the both of you. Okay. So we'll take our break starting now. Okay, so our 1-minute break is up. This is Jen speaking again. So we don't have any questions from the audience yet. So Jean-Luc, I want to ask you, and I want to hear Albanese's weigh in on this, but we've gone through this big election here in the United States. Biden is the president-elect. I think a lot of people think that now that we're without Trump, that everything will be great again, even though it wasn't really great before. How are you feeling, Jean-Luc, about Biden being in office and what he'll mean for Indigenous people in the environment, and not just here in the US, but across the world, since we know America is our actions impact everybody?
So for what it's worth, I have to recognize that a lot of people within our communities and across the world are heaving a sigh of relief because of this madness, this blatant madness that we've been under for the past 4 years. We seem to be coming to the end of one chapter, but this is a very large book that Albanese and I are actually like talking about. It doesn't get solved by the election of one president. And one thing that I would hope is that the United States would re-enter into the Paris Agreement. For what it's worth. I mean, I know that it's not a perfect document. I know that there is just the consideration of the obligations to indigenous nations, but from the nation states that opt into that. I would hope that we would work towards the green New Deal, but also with the principles of the Red Deal, understanding that what has brought us here to this moment, when we're talking about capitalism, when we're talking about extractive industries, when we're talking about what you were talking about, Jen, the sort of this privilege that we have, this American exceptionalism, and that has empowered us to create mountains of waste, but being extracted from other countries, be it Colombia or Bolivia or wherever else in the world. I think that we actually have to do a lot more work. So I absolutely recognize that people feel a little bit safer as we head towards the inauguration. But that is not, but we also have to be vigilant to press the new administration towards more progressive environmental policies and being more inclusive of Indigenous peoples.
This is Jen speaking. Wado, thank you, Jean-Luc. So we did have a couple of questions come in. So Albanese, can you speak about the US funded fumigation efforts in Colombia?
Here, there's been discord and rupture with that. If we talk about what the area of fumigation are on crops, so-called illicit, what they've done is a tremendous amount of problems of health. There's a contradiction between those who've investigated the impact of fumigations on health, but the government always has the money to show what the scientists said or whatever, or that it's not that way. So we know there are two things there. The consequences of the fumigations and what it means. There are associations of defenders who are opposed to the area of fumigation, And we've had some economic agreements to improve the problems, but the government is very stubborn and basically wants those supposed illicit economies are never gonna compensated by illicit economies because they make a lot of money. You can't tell a person that you're gonna give them like a minimum wage, and the government often lies and never does what it says it will do, and then they leave the problem. So what has to do with fumigation, but there are other types of fumigations. I come from a town. I'm from a town that had to live through many years due to fumigation for rice fields and cotton. The generation of that time was many years. Many people were born with malformation, and there's no response to that because it needs to maintain the economic part above the health of people. There are statistics. I don't know them all because I'm not good at remembering them, but I know. But when it comes to coca, it's really bad. Tumaco's been affected, Cauca, and they're unable to get to the bottom of the problem, even if the government says that it's the opposite. This is the reality in the territory.
This is Jen speaking again. Thank
Sorry,
you,
Jen
Albany.
again.
So we have another question here. And it's from Eli, and it's what other fronts in the Indigenous-led environmental justice fight should we be paying attention to? Jean-Luc, do you want to answer that question?
Yeah, I think the point of tonight's conversation, taking the what I'm hearing from Albanese, the wisdom that she's sharing, is that we need to come to a point where we are understanding that there's a different consciousness about what it means to have like different fronts. When we're talking about environmental justice as Indigenous peoples, a field of activism in which many of us feel excluded from. Many of us feel like there is something there that is about us, but it is happening without us because it happens without the consultation. And so we have to talk about these things in a way in which our ancestors would, the interconnectedness. So we're talking about, of course, we're talking about water being sacred, but then of course, like what is the violence that is happening to our women? Of course, that slips into the conversations as well. So, you know, we can't just have, you know, pockets of fights. It is an overall holistic strategy that we need to take. So when we're talking about what are the different fronts that Indigenous peoples are confronted with, then really what the question is, wherever that person is or wherever our allies are they, do they know whose land they are on? Do they know the tribes that that have claims to those lands? And are they having conversations saying what is the priority of the community that has claim to this land? The ancestors that I am standing on here, their lineal descendants, what is their priority? So that's the question that we all need to actually be asking ourselves.
Yeah, this is Jen again. Wado, thank you. So we're running out of time, but we had two questions that I think are kind of similar in nature. So I'm gonna try to phrase this properly. One of the questions was asking, do we think that there is an alternative development approach to aid for multinationals, or a complete eradication of their occupation in countries like Colombia? I think that that is a little similar to this other question that was asked. Are there any efforts that anyone knows of inside corporations like Nestle and poultry farms and such, that are exploiting the earth to create more practices that respect Mother Earth and improve the environment? I'm going to give my little 2 cents, and then I want to hear from Albanese and Jean-Luc on this before we wrap up. I am staunchly anti-capitalism. Capitalism is a white man's value. It's part of colonialism. Capitalism is about earning the most money with the least amount of resources being used, or the least expenses. So companies like Nestle or the large scale chicken farms on my reservation, like, they don't care about the environment, and they're not going to do protections because that's not what they're there for. They're there to earn money, and they're there to earn money for a very, very small group of people in this world, and they will do it at any cost necessary. That's my 2 cents. So Albanese and then Jean-Luc, would you tell us what you think about, the multinationals, and is there
Multinacionales.
for corporations to be ethical?
Voy a partir por lo que
I'm
dice
going to
Colombia.
say
Colombia tiene
a
unas
corporation in Colombia,
en la parte ambiental, en
they
diferentes
supposedly work on environmental issues with
La
different
de
names.
Tolima se llama,
The one in Tolima is called Cortolima.
Tolima sacó una palabra, es como un eslogan que dice,
So their slogan is,
contamina, paga.
who contaminates has to pay. And that was their policy for 4 years.
Y esa es así, así es la
It's like that is the level of perversity of our government when they talk about
las multinacionales.
of multinationals.
No las van a sacar. Ellos
They're not going to get rid of them.
el cuento de los tres tigres que comen en el
It's like
mismo plato.
basically the 3 tigers who eat in the same plate,
Y lo que
because the
tienen en su
model
corazón se llama
and what they have in their heart is ambition,
poder.
power, money, power, money.
Por ejemplo, vuelvo y retomo el caso de los uvas.
So look about the UAs.
La extracción del petróleo ya hace unos buenos años y la pararon.
Several years ago, the UA were able to stop oil exploitation in their lands. They basically threatened to collectively suicide. The oldest UA for many years went around the world telling everyone, we're going to commit suicide if you don't help us. So when Occidental Company, which is a US company, he was going to do it. And everybody knew that this community was going to do this. So they started taking action. Colombia is concessionated in a big part of the country. And they're not going to leave because the government's not going to let them leave. And Duque has been a complete disaster. But frankly, all of them have been the same. I have not seen one who's defended us. Even with the peace accord, the guy who won the Nobel Peace Prize, yeah, he got it. I think the only way we can do this is through the high courts of the streets. It may sound really crazy, and you can think lots of things, but I believe it that way. Also, we We have a colonialism chip in our
Nos enfoca es
brains.
en la sanación. Nos
We
toca
need to
ser
heal
esa
that from ourselves too.
solidaridad con los
We need to
hermanos.
think about solidarity with others.
¿Cómo es esa corresponsabilidad?
What is our co-responsibility?
Pero al gobierno
But to
y a
the
sus
government
políticas
and their policies,
no les interesa sacar las multinacionales porque se
they
les va
don't
la plata.
care taking
Entonces,
the
bajo
multinationals
una
out because then they lose their economic
bajo
income.
de una manera muy sabia. No sé cómo sería. Yo
I don't know
siento
how to
que,
do
por
this, but I
ejemplo, si
feel
yo
that
dejo una inquietud, ¿por qué no lo
there's something.
intentamos?
Why don't we
Esto
try
es una
it?
bola de nieve. Que
Why don't we
todos los que estamos
snowball?
acá
We basically start putting together a big
podamos hablarle a
snowball.
nuestras
We
autoridades
can talk to our
espirituales y de alguna
authorities,
manera nos
the
comunicaremos
spiritual, and we can
diferente.
find a way to speak. And
Porque esto está muy tremendo.
because this is
Aquí la
really
vida no
bad.
vale.
Here, life
Aquí
doesn't
no
have
vale.
value in
La
Colombia.
vida no tiene precio.
It has no,
Acá importa es
everybody can
los
pay
recursos
someone to kill you.
naturales,
All they care about
el
are the natural
oxígeno.
resources,
A mí
oxygen.
eso me parece increíble.
I
Y
think
yo
it's
siento que le endulzan
incredible.
los oídos a algunos
They go and they
políticos
sweet talk some of our
para la venta de
community
oxígeno y
members,
les montan los supernegocios.
and they give them big
Ya
supermarkets.
no se les escapó nada.
So they
Y yo
will do whatever it takes.
tengo que decirlo,
I have to
me
say it.
cuesta mucho trabajo
It's very
entender
hard
los
for me.
pensamientos norteamericanos. Yo
Understand the
no
North
los
American
entiendo.
point of view. I really
Pero
don't get it.
reconozco que hay cosas muy
But I
interesantes.
also know there's very interesting things. For example, it's very organized
Me parece
in terms of
súper
the
chévere
roads
esta
are really
reconstrucción.
well organized.
Y he conocido hermanos una vez,
And I've
he
met
estado algunas
some
veces y conozco
brothers from
hermanos
there
indígenas
when I've been
y
there, and I've met other
reconozco
indigenous people, and I
que hay
understand that
hermanos que
it's the
muestran,
same stuff
que
as
hay
us.
otros que dan la lucha y no los
There's
muestran.
some that are fighting
Porque los
justice and some that don't.
no lo que son.
They
Entonces,
make
en
us look
conclusión,
really
yo
bad.
no sé qué vamos a
So
hacer
in
para sacar a
conclusion,
las
I don't
multinacionales
know what we're going to do
de
to get rid of the
nuestro
multinationals from our territories, from our
no
country.
es una tarea fácil.
It's not an easy thing.
Eso eso ha costado muchas vidas.
It's
Yo
cost a
tengo
lot of
familiares
lives. I should talk
valientes que los
about
asesinaron porque
very
fue el
people who've been
gobierno que los
killed
asesinaron porque
because they went to live in the
descubrieron algo y los
mountains
mandaron a matar.
because
Y
they
ellos
discovered something and they just killed them.
ellos no van a dejar que les toquen su fuente de
They're not going to let
de
people
alguna
touch their
manera para
economic
invertir en
resource,
nosotros,
but not to
sino
invest in us, but
para sus pequeñas viditas y
for
sus
their
adicciones
little
de negocios.
addictions and vices.
Que eso solo es por la dimensión del espíritu, que no
So I
hay
think
otra
it's only through
forma
the spirit. There's no other
más
way
que
we
esta
can do
que
this,
lo quito.
although it may sound a little crazy.
Right, Wado, thank you. So we're
Gracias.
past time, but Jean-Luc, would you like to quickly weigh in on that question before we wrap up?
Yes, Jean-Luc jumping back in, probably 30 seconds to a minute. I can say that you know, it's the idea of who is a person, and who has equal rights. And we will look at a document such as a body of documents such as the Doctrine of Discovery. At that point, it was a Christian prince in Europe. And then when we move further in time here in the United States, we're looking at personhood for corporations at a time when Black and Indigenous peoples were not counted as full persons or persons at all. And so we have to get to this point where our communities were or are in treating everything with personhood and rights and equity. We're talking about rights of nature, rights of animals, rights of plants, rights of everything. When we're talking about like the material world, and we have to do something to push the Catholic Church to rescind the doctrine of discovery. We have to undo undo what has been litigated here in the United States in order to invest personhood in corporations over people, over living beings, because there's one court that's going to ultimately rule us all, and that is the earth, that is the superstorms, that is all of the reaction from this planet that is going to happen if we don't undo this damage.
Wado, thank you. So this is Jen again. I just want to give my deepest thank yous to Albanese and Jean-Luc for being here tonight and sharing so much wisdom with us and sharing yourselves. I know talking about these things can be difficult and they can be painful. So I really appreciate that you came here and you've shared so much of yourselves with us. I think that solidarity is crucial to getting free and having justice. So I also want to say thank you to all of you who were here today watching this. I want to say thank you to the volunteers who are helping make this happen. There is no way I could pull this off alone. There are a lot of people behind the scenes helping out, and I am so grateful to them. I also want to say thank you to our interpreters and to our captioners. You know, access is crucial, and if we are leaving people behind in our organizing work, then we're not doing what we should do. So thank you to them, and thank you to our sponsors as well. Tomorrow night is our final night for the 3 R's series, and we're going to wrap up talking about healthcare access and disability justice. And so that's going to be with Carrie Hawk-Lassard from the Native American Lifelines. And we're going to have Indigenous scholar, scientist, and community activist, Dr. Jessica B. Hernandez, talking about these issues. I also just want to give a little shameless self-promotion. In early 2021, myself and Desiree Kane and Johnny J are launching the Decolonized News Hour on the Real News Network. This will be the only Native created and hosted and produced show on non-Native media. It's also the only show that's being made and hosted by Native women and Two-Spirits on any media platform. So that's an opportunity to continue to learn about these issues and other Indigenous issues, and hear an Indigenous perspective on the news and what's happening in the world. So keep an eye out for that. I also want to say Crushing Colonialism relies heavily on the support of our community members and allies. We are a very small organization, and donations are crucial to our survival. If you are someone who is in the position to make a donation, it would be greatly appreciated. You can do this on our website, crushingcolonialism.org/donate. That link is being put in the chat. And so with that, I want to say just once again, Wado, thank you so much to Albanese and Jean-Luc and everyone else here. And we'll see you again tomorrow. And don't forget to take care of yourselves and each other and keep crushing colonialism every day.